What's up? Welcome to Geek Culture Tonight, episode 2. I'm Brian Drake, your host here on the latest retro. Just taking a look at this culture that we live in, geek culture. That's what this channel is all about. That's what these live streams are all about. They're all about just having a good time in the culture that we share of geek culture and checking it out. So I've got to turn my test of it off real quick up here. But tonight, we're going to be touching base on a couple of topics that we talked about already last time, because I didn't realize, if you watched last time, that my camera kept cutting out. Well, I fixed all that. We've got this on Google Hangouts now to where we can have guests in the future, and that'll be fun to do. So we'll definitely be doing that and having some guests on in the future to talk with us about all the things geek culture. So in the meantime, let's dive right into it. Let's get into our first topic today. Let me get some of this stuff out of the way real quick here. First question of the day. Could it stand to reason that not everything you see online is a picture of reality? That is the first thing we're going to talk about. Could it stand to reason that not everything you see online is the reality when it comes to geek culture, when it comes to online in general, but especially when it comes to geek culture? For instance, all the things going on in geek culture, different infighting. I've kind of touched on it, just trepidatiously stuck my toe in. And we're going to come back to this in a little bit, but the idea that all this infighting, maybe it's not quite as bad as we think it is. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, I want to circle back around to the question of the day. I've got to bring up the live chat here where I can see. Maybe I can do that on this device over here because I got 500 different things showing up. Let's see what's. All right, hang on one second here. I'm working it. Just give me a second to where if I can see if anybody's watching. I have no clue if anybody's watching or not. And if no one watches, that's great. It's more just fun for me to just enjoy it. But it will be archived for later so people can see the geek culture news as it happens later. So let's just see if I've got this rolling. Yeah, okay, there we go. So talked about Indiana Jones 5 and Jonathan Kasdan being the screenwriter for that and how disappointed I was just because of I'm not crazy about the guy. And here's the thing. This is what got cut out of the last episode, and I couldn't figure out where it went. But Jonathan Kasdan has this kind of syndrome that one other person in Hollywood has and geek culture has, and I absolutely do not like their work at all. And it's not even so much their work; it's kind of how they interact with people online. It just drives me a little bit crazy. It's the same syndrome that Max Landis has. It's the syndrome of, well, my dad was in Hollywood, very successful. John Landis, John Hughes, all those kind of comedy movies. Same thing with Lawrence Kasdan. He wrote Empire Strikes Back. He wrote, a bunch of the Indiana Jones movies. It's just one of those things where you go, okay, you were given this job because of who your dad is. But do you actually have that talent? My 4-year-old daughter, I'm a magician. I don't know if I told y'all this. I'm a magician for a living. That's what I do. I travel the country, travel the world, doing crazy stage illusions and mentalism and all that sort of stuff. I have a 4-year-old daughter. If I expected her to get up there and do the job that I do, or do the job that her mother does, as the other half of our show, it'd be silly, right? Because she doesn't have the requisite experience, But what if she travels with me all the time? Maybe she'll pick it up. But even so, what if that same person is not as good of a writer as, let's say, their dad is? And, maybe that person's not as good, and that's okay. That's not a big deal. But why just assume, though, that we should go, hey, here you go. Here's Indiana Jones 5, Jonathan Kasdan, after he took Solo, which, as we know, Solo didn't have the greatest box office return. We know this because we've been talking about it quite a bit on the different stuff that's been happening. So as far as the box office numbers, so could it stand to reason that maybe we shouldn't have given this job to Jonathan Kasdan just because his dad is Lawrence Kasdan? Maybe so. You look at his IMDb and you see that it's just not a lot to it. And this is that same Max Landis syndrome where he was given movies and he's been taking off movies. But if we would have seen his version of the movie, then, well, maybe it would have been better. And I just don't know. It's just not. I don't agree. I don't think that that's the case. And then you get on there and then you make a big rant about Man of Steel, which, by the way, full-blown apologist here for Man of Steel. I love the movie Man of Steel. Huge fan. And so when I see Max Landis get on and bash the movie, talk about that's just not my Superman. It drives me crazy watching that, 5 years later now, drove me absolutely insane. Was it the perfect movie? Of course not, but it's probably, to me, it's the best DC EU movie they've made yet. So I'm still really trepidatious about this whole Max Landis doing the John. I'm sorry, no, that would be worse. I'm sorry, but about Lawrence Kasdan's son, Jonathan Kasdan, doing Indiana Jones 5. Because here's my other worry. This is absolutely what I'm worried about. So there was an article that came out. I don't know where it is, and somebody sent it to me and they said I would totally watch this movie. But the idea was that this was the movie. What if Lupita Nyong'o, I think that's how you say her name, was this bad, awesome, cool treasure hunter? And instead of taking treasure from lost civilizations and putting it in museums, what if she stole it from museums and brought it back to these lost civilizations and put it in their temples and tombs? And I was like, that'd be kind of boring, actually. I'm sorry. That's a boring concept to me. The idea of the whole, like, taking something from the museum and returning it to a culture. It's probably not even there anymore, sadly, just because of, timelines. And so here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that we're going to do this passing of the torch thing in Indiana Jones 5, and it's going to be like, but the character they're going to bring in is just going to be chiding Indiana Jones the whole time of like, oh, you took the cross of Coronado. How dare you? That belongs in a museum, is what he would say. And she would say, so do you. And we'd get this little flashback moment. And then you'd go, wait a minute. He or she, I said she, I don't know why I said she, because that was the rumor. The rumor is that it'd be a girl. He or she, whoever it is, would be like, see, you're just an old man and your ways are wrong because you want to put stuff in a museum. And I'm just like, dude, I don't want to watch that movie. I don't want to watch Indiana Jones get chided the whole time by this younger assistant, whoever he or she may be. I want to just see Indiana Jones be awesome. I do. And I don't care if he does the old man jokes like they did in Crystal Skull. It doesn't bother me at all. I just want to see Indiana Jones be awesome. So that's it for the Indiana Jones 5 talk. I know we dwelled on that for a good bit. Last episode, I talked about how I beat Super Metroid. So we're moving over into the video game section. I want to talk about a quick kind of review of 2 video games that I absolutely love, but a style choice. And this is the style choice I wanted to ask you. Do you prefer a game that is in fact railroaded, as in you don't have a choice of what you're doing, or do you prefer a game that allows you a little bit of freedom when it comes to what you do? So for instance, what I wanted to talk about tonight was Uncharted 4, or actually Uncharted 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Bioshock Infinite. Bioshock Infinite happens to be one of my favorite games of all time. So one of my favorite pieces of media of all time. Something is evocative about the art. It just looks gorgeous. This is some concept art. This scene really never happens, but just this kind of imagery was so gorgeous. When you walk up to Rapture out of the lighthouse the very first time, you see this wonderful story take place. And I think the reason is, as I've gotten older, this is where I fall. Obviously, I fall in the camp of I'd rather be railroaded in a game than I would to have to do, just lots and lots of side quests and things like that. I like the new Zelda, but man, those side quests just get exhausting. It's like, go here and find this piece of armor and go talk to this person. And maybe you can hear from this person a clue so you can go find this other piece of horse armor so that you can have the best horse armor out there. And it just to me, that sounds fun. So a game like Bioshock Infinite, where you can just hit a button that says go this way, it shows a little arrow. I think that to me is a much more fun style of gaming, and it allows for narrative. To me, it allows more for a narrative than it does for than some of these other games. I know somebody's going to be like, but what about Fallout? But what about this and what about that? And that's fine. I'm glad that you have a favorite game like that. I'm glad that you enjoy those types of games. But for me personally, I would just rather have a game that tells a narrative, a tight story, a tight narrative, because after all, that's how I feel like games should be anyway. They should be tight narrative stories. Growing up, I loved Mega Man, I loved Metroid, and all these games that had nothing to do with narrative and story. It was just fun. But now, as I've gotten older, the game I want to play, I want it to have a good story. I don't want it to be some Fortnite game where you're just running around shooting. That's, to each his own. But to me, I just enjoyed the story of Bioshock 1, Bioshock Infinite so much, even if the politics and things are a little bit on the nose. Andrew Ryan sounds an awful lot like Ayn Rand, and it's kind of this Ken Levine version of, politics and things like that. But it's still cool. And I think especially Bioshock Infinite is more fair to all sides of political debate. Even Ken Levine, kind of when he was pressed on it, we'd kind of say, look, this is it. We're trying to be fair about everything. And so I think that was a smart move to do. Just kind of just talk, hey, this is our game. We're telling a story. It's based in this kind of idealized version of American nationalism at the time, and just it's cool. But the art is beautiful. The story is beautiful, and I just like it because it puts you in this narrative and says, go ahead and watch it. Have fun with it now. Just play this game. So that is our video game section. Now, let me know what you think. Do you like a game that railroads you to where you're supposed to go and you really don't have a lot of choice? Or do you like a game that gives you the opportunity to kind of go on millions of side quests to where you can find things and go everywhere? And like I said, find a horse saddle or whatever. So that's kind of the thing we're talking about tonight is open world versus railroad. Me, I fall on the side of railroad now. But that's because I don't have the patience to do microtransactions, or not microtrans, but like in Metal Gear Solid 5, I don't have the patience to send out all these guys I found all over the world to do these little micro missions. I don't have the attention span for that anymore. Maybe that's probably an indictment of me. It has nothing to do with the games. But that's our video game section. Now, tonight, something really cool happened. I don't like to brag. I don't. I feel like bragging is a sign of something that you don't actually have something to prove, so you have to do it with your words about bragging about something. But and this is not really even a brag. It has nothing to do with me. I just saw it on Twitter where Scott Snyder, the author of many fantastic DC Comics books, The Court of Owls, and all these great stories over the years. He's been writing Batman since the New 52, and I think he jumped over to All-Star Batman, started with Detective Comics when it came from Batman, but he is now writing Justice League, and he mentioned on Justice League, on Twitter, just a few minutes ago before the stream started, hey, if anybody has any advanced copies of Justice League #3, hope you enjoy them. Let me know what you think. And I just jokingly tweeted, I don't know the guy at all, but I jokingly tweeted, hey man, I seem to have misplaced mine or something like that. I don't know where mine is or something like that, just as a joke. And then boom, within seconds, he shoots me a DM. He's like, hey, what's your email address? And I was like, wait, seriously? Which brings me to what we're talking about right now. We're talking about, for our comic section tonight, I'm a DC guy, but if you've got a Marvel comic you want me to talk about, especially, just shoot it to me to let me know kind of what you want to hear talked about, whether it's a roast or whether it's a fantastic look at something. Where is this? It's right here. But I've got to switch it over. Hang on one second. Whether it's a roast or whether it's something, that you want to actually hear talked about. So let's go here. I just want to show you the front cover art of Justice League #1. I love this imagery. So Justice League spins out. It's got a new logo. It's got the new stamp in the top left for the new era that we're in DC Comics. But I really love this look. It's classic heroes. It's some of the more different heroes that we haven't seen in a while in the Justice League that we would have gotten in the 2000s and the 90s and stuff like that. You've got Hawkgirl back there in her classic costume. I love that. You got Martian Manhunter on the team again. Finally, you just got this really great image coming out at you. Good art. And this is, I can't remember who did this cover. I want to say it's I don't know if it's Jim Chung or I can't remember. I'll have to look at them and see who did the cover, but this is a fun book. The first issue, that's what I'm talking about tonight, is issue #1. It spins out of this crazy arc that actually goes all the way back to DC Dark Knight's Metal, which was Scott Snyder's big world-changing, universe-changing event that involved, the entire Justice League and involved the entire DC universe, handling this crazy dark multiverse where these monstrous Batmen came out of nowhere, and it's just a really cool storyline. But anyway, they broke the source wall or something. That's not a spoiler. It's just there's a source wall that has something to do with the edge of the multiverse, and because of its tampering, we got the thing that happened in his No Justice storyline, which was this idea of these 4 giant beings coming to the universe, to the multiverse, and start eating planets. That's a very Marvel thing, if you ask me. Which is good because I like cosmic Marvel, but it was a very Marvel thing. These giant beings would just eat planets and destroy planets. I mean, Anti-Monitor did it back in the 80s as well, but and this spins right out of that. Now, this first issue is a John Jones Martian Manhunter story, and it's done so well. It's just Snyder knows he knows these characters. He cares about these characters, and it's good to see someone writing Justice League who cares about the characters again. And I loved Jeff Johns. Jeff Johns is my favorite writer in comics, but it's nice to see Snyder doing such an excellent job on these characters. And so Justice League #1, #2, check it out. As soon as this stream is over, I'm going to go check out #3 that I was sent from Snyder. So I'm looking forward to reading that tonight. Ultraviolet lanterns and all that kind of crazy stuff, which is just like I told Scott, I was like, well, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't there be ultraviolet and infrared lanterns and all this sort of stuff? The invisible spectrum of light. I was like, that's pretty brilliant. So that's the comic recommendation tonight. Would be Justice League #1, #2. You can pick up the whole thing just out of his arc. It's so good. You need to check it out. You need to read it. Coming into our board game section tonight, you can see it up there. There's a huge shelf dedicated to this man's works right here. That would be H.P. Lovecraft. I love this. I got this for Father's Day. It looks a little bit like a Bible, which is kind of creepy, but it's got this. It's one of those Barnes & Noble classics, the complete works of H.P. Lovecraft. The problem is the font is tiny and the pages are super thin and the margins are very small. So reading this in this book is almost impossible. However, you can get it for like 99 cents, the complete works on your iPad. But that shelf up there, Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, Mansions of Madness is what we're talking about. Mansions of Madness is also in the top 5. Talked about Scythe the last episode. This one we're talking about Mansions of Madness 2nd edition, which is an app-driven board game. You say, but I don't want to play an app game. I want to play just a game. Oh, let me just show you what happens here. I just want to kind of pull up and show you exactly how this would work. If you were to play Mansions of Madness, you have your board set up, right? You have your board. And on that board, let's see if I can do it here. I'll continue to ours, confirm, resume, save game. Get this cool little loading screen here. And then let's see. I don't know if I can see it because of where my cursor is here. Yeah, begin scenario right there. Scram, move it. Maybe see if I can move this out of the way. Hide. Let me hide that bar. Yeah, there we go. Begin scenario right here. So you click this. Okay, now you can see the tiles that we have on the board. All our characters that are out there. If you don't want spoilers, I won't even tell you which mission this is, so maybe that'll help. But you just see how the board's laid out, and in each of these little tiles, if you click it, it says, this door has a fancy brass plaque with a slider. Check it out. You can explore it with this button. But I'm not going to do that because I don't want to ruin our turns. You walk around in these different rooms. Each of these are spaces. See how this line divides the spaces in the tile. You can interact with people. Maybe you're talking to this person here. You can ask them multiple different things. You can fight monsters. There's the monsters, if we have any on the board, they're not going to show up on here, which is part of the reason it keeps it from being a totally app game, which, fun fact, Fantasy Flight is releasing an app a game, like a video game version of this strictly for Steam coming in the next few months. Hopefully it'll be on Mac too, because I'm running off a Mac and I don't have a PC and I really want to play it. But it's just a fantastic game. You solve these mysteries, you fight these Lovecraftian monsters, you have these great miniatures. The app is super intuitive. It tells you, what to do when you're stuck, as far as like, use this to escape or whatever. You have this kind of evidence. It also has puzzles built into it. So you might you might get to a door lock and let's say like this door is locked. You have to pick the lock by doing this crazy puzzle on the screen of your iPad or your computer. It's just a beautiful game. So if you haven't played Mansions of Madness 2nd edition, I highly recommend you get a copy and try it out. It's one of the best games out there, period. It's not a horribly expensive buy-in too for what you get. So it's $80 for the course. I say that, but as far as board game prices go, it's $80 for the buy-in of their 2nd edition, but you get, I think it's 5 missions with that. Tons of characters, tons of monsters, and there's already a bunch of other characters and monsters that have been released for it as well. So I can't recommend that game enough. 2nd edition, Mansions of Madness. Go check this out. It's from Fantasy Flight Games. It's phenomenal. It's beautiful. So make sure you have fun with that. And that'll be it for the board game section. Let me know what board games you want to talk about coming up. We'll try to show some more stuff on here as much as I can on here. But let me know what kind of games you want to see. Let me know your thoughts on that. Let me know any kind of questions you have. I know we don't have a whole lot of people. I don't know if there's anybody watching right now, but let me know any kind of chat, any kind of questions you have tonight. And if we don't get any questions, that's fine. We can always do comments later in the post. But it's just easier to do this as a live video, throw it up, because if it is anybody watching live, they can at least see the news as it happens. But then afterward, it becomes a video loaded onto the site. We can do comments on it like that. So So I wanted to circle back around to that question of the day, and I was just a little confused. I was talking to my buddy. I mentioned him last week, last time, and we were just talking about this whole idea of what's going on right now in fandom and fighting and infighting and all that sort of stuff. And could it stand to reason, the question of the day, that what you see online is actually not the picture of reality 100%? And the reason I bring that up, you saw recently there was an article about harassment in board gaming, which first, full stop, period. If you harass someone in board gaming, you're a terrible person. I mean, actual harassment, sexual harassment, physical harassment, anything like that. That's gross. You stop it. You know what I'm saying? But here's what I saw in the comments. Tons and tons and tons and tons of people saying, oh, I had no idea this was going on. I'm so sorry to hear about your experience. I had no clue this was happening. I didn't know. Here's my question. Why bring that up? Could it be that everyone's just ignorant? That's possible. Everyone's just ignorant. They don't notice it. We live in a culture that, propagates this sort of mentality. Or could it be it's not as rampant as may seem, and yet it's easy to castigate an entire group of people without knowing them as an individual just because of who they are? For instance, this would be about men typically in this harassment article. All these comments are saying, I'm so sorry to hear this. It's just, I've never experienced that, blah, blah, blah. I've never experienced. A lot of ladies are saying, I never experienced that. And I'm just so sorry to hear that. No one was doubting the person's claim. No one was saying anything negative. They were just saying, hey, I'm sorry. I've never seen this before. And again, it brings you to two choices. Either everyone's ignorant, or maybe it's not as rampant as it seems, yet the anger, the tenor, the internet heightens everything to where everything becomes this public outrage to where we go, well, just throw them all out. Obviously that's not what people are calling for, but we do this whole, it's time to change our culture thing. You need to be proactive. And I'm like, who, me? Proactive in not harassing someone? I've never harassed someone in my life. In fact, if I saw someone harassing, especially my wife, right, or my daughter, or someone just sitting in a game group and someone says something untoward or inappropriate, I'm going to be the guy who says, hey, you need to cut that out. And I'm saying, I'm not going to be the guy who's like, some shrinking violet who's like, oh yeah, well, to each his own, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to put the dude or whoever it is in their place. But whoa, what are you doing? Stop it. That's what it takes. You end that right there. You don't have to do this retraining stuff and be like, well, all men or all this person or all this type of people or all this are this. Then we end up with problems when you start castigating everyone of a group as something, but you don't know that person as an individual. You have no clue what their experiences are other than what you identify them as just through their Twitter profile. And that to me is unhealthy. That's where it really gets unhealthy in the hobby of board gaming places, when we start to just pit groups of people against each other based on what we think is the reality of Twitter. And unfortunately, it's not the reality. Again, this has nothing to do with the original article or the experiences in the article. This has to do with what I see online, and they're just fighting and arguing about it and saying, well, you're this because of this. You think like this, or you should think like this because you are an X. And it's just not healthy. It's ridiculous. So could it stand to reason that what you see online is not always the truth? Absolutely. Absolutely. We have to allow room for the benefit of the doubt that maybe just maybe, it's not quite real life. When you walk outside after having a Twitter fight and you introduce yourself to someone and you have a great conversation and you realize, maybe the internet's just not a good place for conversations like this. So that's it for tonight. Geek Culture News, Geek Culture Tonight, episode 2. We're going to be coming back next week, either Monday or Tuesday, probably Tuesday. More news coming at you. It's a weekend, so there's not a whole lot of news. But when we get news Monday and Tuesday, I'll definitely be sure to include it in the episode. I'm going to read Scott Snyder's Justice League number 3 right now. Number 2, again, was amazing. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you want to see more of this, let me know what you'd like to see, what changes you'd like to make, who you'd like to have on as a guest, and I'll try to get them. What games you'd like to talk about, what comics you'd like to talk about, what movies you'd like to talk about, anything. This is for you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And as we build this slowly, steadily, but surely, continue to grow. Share it with other people. If you enjoy what you're hearing here, share it with other people. Let's just have a good time with it. So, serious topic to end on there, but fun stuff. So when we have guests in here, it'll be a little bit more loose, a little bit more fun. And when we get some more news topics that are a little bit funnier and a little bit sillier, then we'll have a little bit more fun with that too. But that's it for tonight. I'm Bryan Drake with The Latest Retro. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at The Latest Retro. Let me see if this works real quick while I'm at it. While I've got the live stream going, it hasn't been working. So I'm just curious if this is going to work. Yeah, no, it didn't work. That's what I thought. So until next time, make sure you follow me on Twitter at the latest retro. If you want to see our video game reviews that I do over on the Dice Tower, go to the Dice Tower's page, or you can go to my page and see the links to all the videos that I have on the Dice Tower. There's about 110 of them right now. So that's it for this time. Until next time, I'm Bryan Drake. I'll see you. How do I stop this? I'm kidding. I know how you stop it. That's just what people do.